Okay, welcome back. I met you already this morning. I'm Stephanie Hauser. This is my new AD workshop as well in my new role. I was hired about 1 year ago at the WIAA, but was not in town for this meeting. I was actually out in Louisville with my youngest son's AAU tournament last year. So it's my first time as well. Welcome. Really glad you're here. Funny story I always like to share is that I actually did this workshop twice as a new AD. I came the first time, brand new, hadn't been even on the job more than a month, didn't know what I was doing, walked away pretty overwhelmed, called Deb and said, can I come back next summer again? And she said, sure. I came back and I did it twice, and the second time was even better because I had a lot more knowledge in my pocket and knew what I was doing. So I really enjoyed it, and hopefully you will feel like you walk away with a lot of good information. First of all, I want to know that we welcome emails and calls from you throughout the year. All of us in this office were sitting in your chair at one point in time. So please know that no question is a silly one. We've been there. We've lived it. Call your colleagues in your conference. Find somebody you can connect with, either through WIAA as a mentor or really just somebody in your conference that you know well. They've been there too. And the role of the AD is very unique. There's not a lot of other people that really understand what you do other than those of us who've done it. So tap into that resource. The WIAA workshop's amazing. You'll find a lot of great resources there and people. And like I said, lean on them because they've done the same thing. They expect you to do that. So my job today is to go through this document with you. You recognize this? It's a fall season regs. How many in this room have been a head coach? Okay, so I hope that as a head coach, you went through this with your athletic director at that time. And I would highly recommend that, first of all, to you. When you have a preseason meeting with your head coaches, have this document with you. We used to print out enough copies for every head coach to have their own. We don't do that anymore. The school gets a limited number of copies. So what I would encourage you to do, go sport by sport, print it out off the web page, and give your head coach that copy to meet with them. So we're going to look at volleyball today. If you look at volleyball, it starts on page, let's see here, 59. So again, what I would encourage you to do, make a photocopy of this. And when you have your preseason meeting with your volleyball coach, you have this, a copy for you and a copy for them. I always tell the coaches, it is their job to know this really, really well. You cannot be an expert in every sport. You've got too many sports you're overseeing. Of course, you're going to feel most comfortable with the sports that you coached. You have to rely heavily on your coaches to know this for their sport. So have it handy. Place special emphasis on anything shaded in gray because that means that it's new from last season. If you have a head coach, it's a brand new head coach, it's all new to them. But for a veteran coach that's done this many, many times, again, just the gray area will be new to them. So let's take a look at those together. First of all, to find them on the web page, you just go to sports. Well, let me back up. Let me go in the way you would go. You would go schools. You can go to your AD resources and get links to all of those. We've got quick links underneath there, which you're going to cover, right? Okay. So let's go sports volleyball for right now. And this is going to look the same for every single sport. If you go to the rules and regulations in any one of the sports, you're going to get the electronic copies of those. Come on. And it doesn't want to go. There we go. So right over here on every sport, you're going to find electronic copies. So let's look at the season regulations together first of all. Come on. All right. So again, we're looking at page 59. Now the format, as I mentioned, for every sport is the same. The general format. So some of these things Wade just covered with you. He talked about preseason and out of season. He talked about summertime contacts. So we're not going to cover those, but again, you saw the awesome checklist he just shared with you on summertime contact. That applies right here as well. It's a great document. Well, let's break down the specifics for each sport. You're going to see at number 2, your length of the season. It's going to outline when you can start, when you can have your first scrimmage, your first game, when it concludes, your minimum days of practice. Remember, this is your this is a team, number of team practices. So that's going to be almost the same for most sports, but a little variation. Outlines your scrimmages. In volleyball, we allow 2 scrimmages. Make sure you pay close attention to the criteria of what constitutes a scrimmage for each sport. There are some variations in those. On the next page, we are on page 60 now, date of your first contest. This is really important when you're doing scheduling, and you're going to find that you're going to work ahead, probably 2 seasons is always kind of the rule of thumb. It's fall right now, you want to be locking up your spring season. So when you're looking at scheduling volleyball for next year, probably November, December, you'll be doing that. Pay close attention and not schedule a contest before Tuesday, August 23rd next year, or this year, I should say. Maximum allowed contests. Again, varies from each sport, so pay close attention, especially if you're at a smaller school. You've got kids that are sharing levels. You would be really cognizant of that, the maximum number of contests for your team, and making sure that you don't have any kids that are exceeding the maximums for their season. This is number 8 is the same for all sports. How many of you have been to the AD Quick Links spot yet? AD Quick Links. Okay, I believe Deb's going to cover that more in depth. What I really like about that is most of these things are listed alphabetical order. So you just go ejection, type in the word ejection, and under Quick Links, you're going to find the form. If you do have a coach ejected, you'll go to Quick Links, click on ejections. It'll take you right to the form where you have to report a coach ejected. I think you're going to love that Quick Links. It's going to be a really helpful resource for you finding things quickly on our webpage. All right. This is something that is very important that you cover, especially before the WIAA tournament series begins with your coaches. Remind them. Player ejections, coach ejections. If you're leading up to that tournament series starting, you have a player ejected right before, it can have some really season-ending repercussions. And so that's a good reminder before tournament starts, not only in your preseason meeting, but again, before you start that postseason tournament series. Some general things, again, these are the same for all sports. Licensed officials, if you're ever unsure how many you have to hire, this will tell you for each sport how many are required. In volleyball, 2 are required for all varsity, 2 are recommended for non-varsity, but only 1 is required. Medical coverage, concussion, again, same for all sports, oxygen and IV fluids. All right, now, starting with number 15, which now we are on page 61 in your booklet. This really breaks down the rules for the competition of each sport. Again, your coach really needs to be informed on this, because if you aren't a volleyball coach, this is not going to even make sense to you. So make sure that they have a very good understanding of these things. All right, we'll keep going. Line judges, 2 are required for volleyball. Now, the state association regulations. These are things that vary slightly from the National Federation. All of you know the rule book, the NFHS rule book that you get. So we have National Federation adaptations for our sports and also state association regulations. So you're not going to find those in your rules manual. You're going to find those in this document and also on the individual sport web page. So these are things that will be, specific for volleyball. Talks about the pre-match warm-ups. Uniform equipment. Note it's in gray. That changed from last year. We have a new uniform for volleyball this year I hope you're familiar with. It's a solid jersey requirement that is brand new for 2016. Volleyball coaches and ADs have known for a couple of years it's been coming. But this is just to remind you that if you have non-varsity teams, they can wear the old uniforms that are not compliant with the new rule. So again, if you have JV teams that are handing down those varsity uniforms, they can wear them if they're non-compliant. As soon as you buy new uniforms for your JV team, though, they have to meet the new rules. Any questions so far? All right. This covers just teams with 9th grade students. Again, all sports, not just volleyball. And that is the end of the season regs. So again, this is stuff that governs your regular season volleyball season. All right, questions so far? Come on, somebody, shoot me a question. Anybody here coach volleyball or did? Okay, is there anything that I probably should have hit on there that I didn't? Do you think it was pretty important to you as a head volleyball coach?
I didn't coach high school volleyball, so I'm sorry.
All right. Anybody who's been a head coach of any sport, was there anything I missed in there that you felt was, pretty, we should mention as a group that was pretty relevant that you should focus on when you meet with your coaches, your head coaches?
I just have a question. If I want to schedule a pink game for cancer awareness or something like that with volleyball, for the uniform compliance, is there something I should look at?
All right, so let me see. I'm going to figure out how to back out of here. I want to show you. So again, under rules and regulations, you're going to find a lot of helpful information. Here's the uniform rule, the libero jersey we just talked about, hosting a pink event right here for volleyball, because we get so many questions about hosting a pink event that you're going to read a lot of information that people have asked questions specifically about pink events or purple events or red events, depending on what their focus is. Another really interesting part in here is the Q&A section. Hang on a second. So this is nice for each sport, and make sure your coach knows that it's there. When we do get common questions asked by officials or by coaches, we'll include those on the web page, and that'll be under each sport. Under rules and regulations, you'll find Q&A. So it's commonly asked questions. We try to reference, if appropriate, we try to reference which rule the question pertains to. And right now they're ordered chronologically. I just talked to the interns about a possible project of reordering those by rule instead of by chronological time period. So we'll see if we can get that done. Put on our wish list. Any other questions right now? Okay, let's shift to part 2 then. So in the next pages following, it is tournament procedure, volleyball tournament procedure, starting on page 63. All right, so again, back to the volleyball page, under rules and regulations, and then over here, instead of season regulations, we're going to look at the tournament procedures. So once again, the format looks the same for all sports, but the guts of it is unique to each sport, depending on how the tournament procedure is laid out for that sport. So the first thing you're going to see, it tells you how the divisions are divided up. We get a lot of questions. I was an AD that made a call when our school moved from one section to the other, especially in wrestling. How are we now in with WIAA, West, and Merrill? And they're dominant this year, and we've always been with Rapids, and now we're in with WIAA, West, and Merrill. Well, this answers those questions. You look at a state of Wisconsin, a map, you look where the schools are laid out. The largest 116 are Division I. Look at a map. Well, I could clearly see Lakeland moved to Division II, so there goes Stevens Point up to this northern sectional. It makes sense. So if you're ever wondering about how those things get divided and what it looks like, this is where it tells you that, right here under that. You'll also see on the page, let's see here.
Do you have a data what number they use, the enrollment data for that?
We do not put that on the web page, but if ever you need to know, just call us and we'll give you that information. Yep, no problem. What can I see? Brackets. No. Okay, but just go to general volleyball page, right? It's got to back out one. Thank you. So then, I went to the volleyball home page, backed out one, and then you can see where the brackets are. So here is the information relating to that tournament series and how it's broken down. Volleyball had the option to break into small circles or not this year. Division I always stays in the large sectional grouping, as you see here. Once they do their seeding meetings later in the volleyball season, now you'll see brackets when you focus on this. You'll actually see the seeds and the tournament bracket rather than just a group. So that will change as the tournament progresses. Okay, back to. All right. The rest of page 63 really just kind of overviews what the volleyball tournament looks like. It gives you dates. It's really important for you for facility planning to get those dates on your calendar. If you are not the facility reserver, make sure you are good buddies with whoever does that for your building, because it's a tough thing when you find out that there is a huge choir concert scheduled on the same night that you were supposed to have a regional basketball game. It's a conversation that's difficult to have because those two events are equally important to the two groups that are involved in it. So just look far enough ahead on your calendar, get those dates on your facilities calendar, and look at potential conflicts far out. That's like one huge piece of advice I could give you for your first year. Try to avoid those if you can. It's not a comfortable conversation. Page 64 outlines the state tournament, what that looks like. On the web page, under tournament procedures.
Going back to that.
Yep.
If you feel you have a decent squad, you should anticipate hosting a regional contest.
I would anticipate hosting always, because again, those concerts and other events, a lot of times they're community events. Sometimes they're not even your school events or community events. They like to get those things on the calendar well in advance. Well enough in advance, you're not going to know if you're going to have a good enough team to be hosting the first several rounds. And so I would definitely pencil them in. And they are penciled in, but at least if a conflict comes up, it's potentially going to be a conflict. It's a lot easier to take it off a calendar if your team ends up not having a great season or losing early. Go ahead.
I'm probably asking a dumb question for most of you.
No dumb questions.
I'm new to Wisconsin, don't know anything about the structure. Everybody makes a state tournament here in every sport? Is that what I'm being
In all
told?
sports except for football.
And how do you seed your tournaments? Do you have a power ranking, or do you just?
The coaches meet and seed as a group. There's a process. We will. You know what? Let's cover that in just a minute when we get there.
No, that's
How
fine.
does that
If
sound?
I'm the only one, somebody can.
No, let's cover it. It's coming up in this document, in fact. So, good question. Yep.
Do we have to apply to host, or do we just get assigned to host? Does that come from you, or does that come from us?
At the end of each season, you will have an opportunity to fill out tournament hosting. So if I go to resources, and I believe you'll get an email prompt from Deb Hauser's office that they are now available and you can complete it. So where would I find it, Deb? Tournament hosting. They're not there right now? It's okay.
So the reminder will come from you guys. We don't have to be aware of it. It just comes.
You'll get a reminder. And so here, I'm logged into the AD resource page now. This is your opportunity to fill out hosting for spring of 2017, all sports. It's by sport. Let's say I would like to host softball. I've got a great facility. You fill out the application, hit submit, and then we get a database of all schools who have volunteered to host. Now those sports that seed, for example, softball, the regional tournament will be based on how you're seeded, whether you're hosting or not. But those sectional sites will be assigned, and those assignments will come from this pool of athletic directors that volunteered to host. One of the most common questions I think I get comes from a coach, and it's an awkward conversation because they'll call and say, well, how come we have a beautiful facility? How come we didn't get to host? I'll look back, well, you better go talk to your athletic director because they did not volunteer to host. It's always kind of an uncomfortable conversation. I was an AD, and but it is what it is. So please, if you want to host and you know that you've got a coach that's willing to help you out, host a really good event, please fill those out at the end of each season. and give yourself the opportunity to host those events.
One other question. Are there minimum requirements to host? Like, for example, a soccer field, does it have to be a certain width?
Yep, there are dimensions and things like that that are required for each sport, and that, I believe, is right here in this document. And volleyball, it's probably, though, there probably aren't. Softball, you could go to softball and look. Do you have a fall sport that has soccer wood? Yep. Let me show you on soccer. Let's go to page. We're in tournament procedures. Volleyball is not a great example because you're not going to see special requirements. But page, let's see here. You guys find it first. Let me know. 32, but yeah, I'm looking for a facility. Okay, so page 32, number 2E, and there's a note, criteria for approved site. So soccer, your field must be minimum of 65 by 110, soccer only field. But not all sports have those extra requirements. And volleyball, I believe, is one that doesn't have an extra requirement that you must have a certain thing. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that we won't take into consideration your seating capacity, availability to have a press table. Those things may come into play, but they're not requirements in most sports. All right, you guys ready to move on, or more questions right now? How are we doing on time, then? We need to wrap up. Okay, that's okay. That's all right. We're almost done. Back to, let's just go back one more. What's that? Okay, don't gong me. We're almost done. Let's go here one more time, and here one more time. Being fussy. Seating procedures on 65, can we talk about that for a moment? Because we had a question about it. This is really important to meet with your coach, not only preseason, but as you're approaching tournament time. As I mentioned before, to review these tournament procedures, do it before the seating meeting, especially if you have a brand new head coach. It's great to talk this through so they understand how the seating procedures go. When you log in as an AD, you're going to see tournament hosting materials. So in volleyball, tournament materials, seating materials. So tournament materials, a lot of things we just talked about. Seating materials is what I'm referring to right now. Gives the dates and locations of the meetings, the procedures, hosting information, the different forms that your coach will need to complete. Those, the documents where they rank teams. So make sure that your coach is equipped with all the information. If you have a really good AD hosting the meeting, you're going to feel really in tune and involved. But sometimes ADs get really busy and their communication isn't great. So that it falls back on you to make sure your coach is prepared and ready to go. Once that meeting takes place, either in person or online, the coach will rank, and then the brackets will be released based on those seatings. So you'll know when your coach leaves that meeting, you will know instantly what you're hosting, what day, who you're hosting, what time. Any other questions about seating meetings?
Is there any talk about in the spring this past season, our seating meeting fell on a rain date game, and it was like an hour and 45-minute drive from the visiting school we were at to the seating meeting for our coach to get there. So I just didn't know, we asked if they could do the seating meeting via fax, and like people in our group didn't want to do that. Is there any talk, as the spring season is so hard for baseball and softball to get everybody together? Well,
remember, it's a day that it must be concluded by.
Right.
So they probably went on that last date. They could have moved it up a day early or 2 days early. They can go earlier. Remember, your head coach can always send a representative as well. It doesn't have to be them attending the city meeting. They could send somebody in their place. And, there are other means. You can do a conference call there. In most sports, those are options as well. Some sports restrict that. You've got to be there in person. So just work with the host AD on that if that happens. All right, and then just the rest of this just reviews, page 67 reviews the regional tournament. As a reminder, if you host an event, following that event, you'll be filling out a financial form. I just want to show you where it is. I did it myself. Are they there yet, Deb, you know?
Tournament materials.
Yeah, I don't think they're under there. They're usually right here on the side. Well, I'll tell you what. You know where it is? It's under AD resources. Right here. So under AD resources, you'll click on if you're going to host a volleyball tournament game. Then following that, you will complete your financial form right here. So here's a regional auto calculate form. And then you'll submit this electronically to our office, and that will get you reimbursement for your volleyball tournament series. It's not downloading, but that's where you find it. So AD resources, financial forms, anytime you host a tournament series, fill that out to get reimbursement for your officials and your expenses and such. Okay.
It's an auto calculating form, so you just put in your info and it'll auto calculate the amounts. So it really is pretty slick, and then you just attach it and email it in and you're good to go.
All right, any other questions on the tournament series? If you do end up hosting, again, feel free to call here. All of us have been ADs. We've got checklists that we've used for hosting large events, depending upon the sport. We've got awards presentation procedures we can share with you. We've got scripts for PA to use for a gymnastics sectional, track and field. So borrow. Don't recreate your wheel when none of us have done that either. We've all borrowed. So please feel free to reach out and we'll share whatever we've got with you. I've put most everything I use as an AD on Google Docs, so it's really easy to share if somebody calls.